What's up everyone, OJ here, welcome back to another video, and today we're talking about the impact of the Nintendo Switch lifetime to date sales surpassing the PlayStation 4 in Japan and what that's going to do for the Japanese game industry, which I've spoke about in a few other videos. But now that we have the official numbers from Famitsu that the Nintendo Switch has surpassed the PlayStation 4, I wanted to talk about it a little bit more in depth and what we can expect going into next generation, just based on some thoughts that I do have and some trends that I am seeing. So if you want the full Famitsu sales numbers for the software, they do have the top 10 software sales. I do want to add some little clip notes here and there. So Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, that game is selling absolutely phenomenal. It is the best selling game in Japan on the Nintendo Switch, and pretty much the best selling game this generation in Japan if you count, like, let's say Dragon Quest 11 and Final Fantasy 15, Monster Hunter World, Splatoon 2. There is not a better game in terms of sales than Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, with 3,076,099 physical units sold. Once again, that does not include digital sales that Nintendo does have, but includes the retail sales in Japan. So it has passed up Splatoon, and once again, I figured that this would happen considering the strong start that Super Smash Bros. Ultimate did have. When it comes to software sales, out of the top 10 that Famitsu linked here, 9 of those were Nintendo Switch games. So that just kind of shows you the trends there, and multiple ones were first-party games. There was actually only one third-party game in the top 10 when it comes to Nintendo Switch titles, and that was Minecraft, and that game is humming along with nearly 800,000 units sold, not including digital. Those are all physical units. So yeah, much more than that if you count the digital side as well. And also Days Gone on the PlayStation 4, that's actually not doing too bad in Japan with another 45,000 units, and that's over 160,000. But overall, not necessarily a busy month for new releases when it comes to the Switch, but it's great to see. I think the biggest thing for me, at least what I like to see a lot, is the fact that The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, a game that was a launch title in Japan, so over 2 years, and that game is still in the top 10. It was number 10 with another 16,000 plus units sold for 1.3 million plus, not including digital. That's so good to see. That's called an evergreen title. So shout outs to the Zelda team and Nintendo on that one. Now let's go and move on to the main topic here when it comes to what the Nintendo Switch did in the previous week. So the Nintendo Switch sold another 37,471 units, and it now has a total of 8,125,637 units. The PlayStation 4 now has a total of 8,077,756 million units in the country. Now, why this is somewhat significant, and you're kind of seeing it kind of pop up on Twitter and all over the place, is that the PlayStation 4 actually launched in February 2014 in Japan. All right, it didn't launch in 2013 with the worldwide release or the Western release. It launched in 2014, and the Nintendo Switch launched a little bit under 3 years later, and the Nintendo Switch has already surpassed it. Now, why is this significant? Well, it's not just about, oh yeah, look at that, the Switch has outsold the PlayStation 4 in Japan, because it's just not about that, right? Obviously, it's about the worldwide sales too, and the PlayStation 4 is doing really good worldwide in Europe and of course here in the US, and the sales are pretty much at 100 million at this point. So it's not like the Switch has surpassed it worldwide. That's one thing that you have to know, and Sony is not focusing on Japan as much, but I think that's where the big shift comes into, because for the longest time, pretty much since the PS1 era, Japan and PlayStation have always been pretty much, when it comes to home console sales, that has been the dominant factor. Japan and PlayStation has been number one system, and this is the first time in a while. And I know that the Wii actually outsold the PlayStation 3 in Japan, I think it outsold it, or was very close when it comes to the sales there, but this is the first time that it's going to be a definitive win for Nintendo when it comes to Japan and Japanese sales. So what is that going to do going forward with the market and the landscape? And that's what I'm most interested in, not who sells the most or anything like that. I'm interested in how this affects the market and what we get on the Nintendo Switch. And I think that is really going to be the big shift here, and what is really going to change up the whole game in Japan heading into next generation, especially if you look at a lot of Sony's censoring practices that you're seeing across the board. A lot of the smaller end developers are getting their games censored to hell and back, and I think that this is really the shift where a lot of them just say, okay, we're just going to put stuff on Nintendo. Now, Nintendo's always had a great track record with their portable systems, so I think this kind of naturally lends into that, but this is also a home console console as well. So you're getting a lot of the titles that would have never appeared on a Nintendo home console to now appear on the Nintendo Switch, whether it's Japanese titles or even Western titles. But we're focusing on the Japanese market and what this does going forward. Now, you're seeing games, for example, like Bandai Namco with God Eater, with Sword Art Online Hollow Realization, Sword Art Online Fatal Bullet. You're seeing a lot of these titles that never came to Nintendo home consoles beforehand, the first time ever coming over to Nintendo Switch. And I think the biggest thing here, guys, is I think that instead of the Nintendo Switch when it comes to next generation, right, or what Nintendo does in the future, instead of it being as barren as it was with the Switch launch, this shift with the sales here is going to get Nintendo a lot more support whenever they decide to do their next thing, or even when developers are shifting over games to the next PlayStation or the next Xbox. I think they're going to have teams that are set like, okay, with these sales here, with what's going on in Japan, with the sales trends and everything, yeah, we need to make sure that we have a team making a Switch version of this game, and better yet, day and date with the other versions of the game. So even if the Switch isn't as powerful or whatever the case is, it's still going to have some games on the system because they know that the sales are going to be there and people want to be able to play their games anywhere that they want. And I think that next generation, that's going to be the big thing here, because I think that Nintendo Switch, whatever Nintendo does, like the Switch 2 or whatever the case is, I think that's going to get way more support than what we saw with the Nintendo Switch. I think that the sales of the Switch and how it's doing definitely impacts that. And that's what I want to see the most, because I think companies like Bandai Namco, they talked about it. They actually stated that they didn't know that the Nintendo Switch was going to be as successful as it was starting out. They were caught off guard by the sales of the Switch, and there's no way that any developer in Japan, especially after looking at what's going on here and how fast the Nintendo Switch surpassed the PlayStation 4 in Japan, there's no way that you can be caught off guard anymore with this design concept, with the concept of the Nintendo Switch, this being more of a universal concept that you can use and you can reuse over and over, because what it is a hybrid. It's something that everybody always wants. People always want to be able to play their games anywhere. I mean, some people don't, but whatever for those people. Most people want to be able to play their games at TV and also play their games wherever they want. Just like most people want to be able to have a cell phone, right, where they can make calls at home and they can make calls on the go. So I think it kind of just lends its way to entertainment, right? Or like a Walkman. People want to be able to listen to music at home and on the go. You can do that with the cell phone. You can do that with the, back in the day, the Sony Walkmans or CD players or whatever the case is. People always want to be able to have entertainment anywhere that they want. So the Nintendo Switch is a natural evolution of what we've already been getting for multiple years, but they've just done it in a way to where it's easy to be able to switch back and forth between playing at home and also playing on the go. So I think going forward, there's not going to be like, oh, we didn't know. We're going to get more support from Bandai Namco, from Capcom, from Square Enix, and a lot of these Japanese developers that weren't there at the launch of the Nintendo Switch and weren't there pretty much for the first year or didn't really have much. That's going to be a very different case. So I think that's where, when it comes to the sales, that's where you guys should be most concerned from. Like I said before, I don't really care too much about, oh, well, it outsold the PS4. I just want to see Nintendo do well so it does get that support, because, guys, honestly, that's the reason why we saw so few support with the Nintendo Switch at launch, even from Japanese developers. The Wii U was a critical flop worldwide. It was a critical flop worldwide. Games weren't selling anywhere near as much as they should have, and things just weren't good for developers on the East and on the West when it comes to things. So I think that going forward, this is a good sign. This is definitely a good sign, and you want to see that Nintendo is going to have that sales financial backing so they can get these titles and they can move forward. So that's the interesting thing with this. That's the interesting thing. But I think the shift in what Japanese developers are seeing with the sales numbers here is definitely going to play a big pivotal role with what Nintendo's doing. And even if you look at it, Nintendo was far more accepting with this generation, with the Switch, when it comes to Japanese games. I mean, with the Wii U, they just didn't care. I mean, they weren't really pursuing much of the Japanese titles at all. They were pursuing a lot of the Western games that were Xbox 360, PS3, Batman Arkham's, and stuff with EA and all that, and their broken, relationship. They were pursuing that. They were not pursuing the Japanese style games. A lot of Japanese developers, even like the smaller end ones or the tier 2 ones, for example, like Nippon Ichi Software, were surprised that Nintendo went out to their studio and visited them kind of out in the middle of nowhere or whatever the case was. So they were surprised by that. And a lot of Japanese developers didn't really feel that Nintendo was doing too much for the Japanese industry when it came to the home console side. Now, of course, the portable side, very different thing. But now that Nintendo integrated the portable and home console into one, I think it kind of all came into fruition with what Nintendo wanted to do with the vision and actually getting Japanese developers more involved on the home console front. So this is definitely good to see. I like the fact that Nintendo is continuing to push with this, and I'm pretty sure that this was going to lead for a lot more games on the system, a lot more day and date releases on the system, and a lot more support when it comes to the Switch 2 or the next Switch at launch. So we're not having to wait however many months after the next PlayStation or whatever gets certain games. We can get those day and date with other systems as well. And at the end of the day, I think that's what all gamers want. They want parity when it comes to day and date releases. They want to be able to not have to wait months afterward. They want to be able to have games and not have to say, okay, well, where's the game at, or port bag or anything like that. Just want to be able to just have the game right there, just like it should be, right? Just like it should be. So we're starting to see a lot more of that. The releases are starting to get better and better and starting to become closer and closer or day and date with the PlayStation 4 versions and Xbox One versions. So what do you guys think about the Nintendo Switch in terms of what it's doing in Japan, past the PlayStation 4? What do you think about the future when it comes to the Switch 2 or whatever they do next based on these Japanese sales and the trends that we're seeing in Japan? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Go ahead and check out the links in the description below. We got Facebook and Twitter. Go ahead and give us a like and a follow on our social media. Hit that like button if you did like this video. Let me know you guys want more content like this going forward in the future. And subscribe to PlayerEssence for this RPG, Japanese, and Nintendo gaming news. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you guys for the next one. Peace.